Momentum isn't about being motivated, it's about being in motion. When you begin to take action, then motivation follows. When you begin to take action, then results will happen. But until we begin to move, we're going literally nowhere. And today we're going to talk about that. Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I am a third generation minister, international best-selling author of 40 books and counting. Over the course of the last 40 years of a business, I've had the incredibly wonderful privilege of working with doctors, lawyers, brand new startup companies, people who are stay-at-home moms, people who you've heard of, and people who you've absolutely never heard of. Because I was born into the media. 59 years ago at my birth, I was in the local newspaper, and I've been spending and doing my whole entire life since then things that not only have made me visible, but more importantly are there to help you be visible and valuable and make the difference in this world that only you can make. You have a purpose. The world absolutely needs you to be exactly who you are. And really, more than anything, what I want to do today is I want to show you what and where the power really comes from. Because without your momentum, you won't have, as my good friend Willie always says, you can't take the off of it and create a moment. Moments come when we're in motion. Momentum is the starting to everything else moving. It's interesting that we go that way with it because it's so easy to spend our lives in transformational workshops and reading the deepest, most impactful. And I'm not saying they aren't great stuff. I've worked with a lot of these really incredible authors, insightful, massively world life transforming type of books. I'll never forget, right as I was going through my second divorce, it was recommended to me, and I began to read the book, The Untethered Soul. And honestly, I got to tell you, when I first read it, I was completely adverse to it. I was really fighting the thing, but I will balance that with saying I absolutely loved from day one the phrase untethered. I love that concept. But here's the thing. As motivational as that is, as much and as powerful as Think and Grow Rich is, as highly actionable as Win Friends and Influence People is, and the list goes on and on and on of all kinds of books that are out there, okay? Those start off, hey, Aiden, glad to have you here with us. Those books, more than anything at their core, they start off with motivation. And motivation is good. But if we don't move, the motivation isn't what starts the thing. Movement is what creates the momentum. You can be the most massively motivated person laying up in the bed dreaming of a better life and never get anywhere. Or you can talk about, yes, the Bible absolutely is a massively motivational book that is filled with things that you can use to create momentum in your life. But again, they have to take action. Since it's Sunday, and since I did tell you at the beginning of it that I'm a third generation minister, think back to one of the more well-known Bible stories. The little kid with the 5 loaves or the 5 fish, 5 loaves and 3 fishes. Okay, whatever. All right. I may have just said that backwards, but you'll forgive me anyway, right? The feeding of the 5,000. There's a verse in there that we often miss. Because the disciples come to Jesus and they say, it's getting late in the day. should we let these people go so that they can go into the nearby towns and stuff and find something to eat? And Jesus looks at him and says, why don't you just feed them? And their question to him is, that would cost a year's wages. Are you saying we should do that? I want you to understand a couple of things in there. Number one is, they didn't say there's absolutely no way we could possibly do this. They just simply told him what the cost of doing it would be. Big difference. We need to understand that. Okay. But even just in what I just said, that's motivational. That is aspirational. That is abundance mindset. You can have the greatest, most abundant mindset in the world. And if you aren't doing anything, there is going to be no money coming into your bank account. At the end of the day, it takes beginning to pass out the food. Yes, you need your faith, you need your belief, you need all of those things tethered to, like how I moved from untethered to tethered to that belief and that understanding and that mindset and that motivation. This isn't saying that mindset and motivation are not absolutely mandatory. That's why the first thing you need is clarity. You need to be clear who you are, who you're meant to serve, what you can sell, Well, that too, but what you can say to them that can help them. But that clarity is only as effective as you use it consistently. It's like, think about it, okay? If you go out to your car, all right, there's a couple of ways to move your car. Option A would be, you just need to move it an inch or two, okay? You put the car in neutral and you push it, okay? When you first push that car, and maybe you only need to move it just a foot or two. And so you decided, for whatever reason, to not just turn it on and move it a foot or two. You decided it's better to just push it. Or maybe it's completely out of gas and you need to move it a couple of feet to it being to the place where you could get the gas pump to it, right? Anybody that's ever actually ran out of gas and tried to coast in and not quite get it to the pump knows what I'm talking about. Okay? You know from experience, if you've ever pushed a car, that those first moments of energy are the hardest. They make you work the most, the hardest, the mostest, if you will. But once you get the car moving, the truth of the matter is moving the car that couple of feet is probably going to be harder than moving that car a couple 100 feet. Because once you get it moving, whereas it took 5 or 10 people to be able to, get the car first starting moving, one person can keep it moving. I mean, as long as it's on a flat and level surface. And even if you're going uphill, it takes way less effort once the car's moving. Once you're in motion, once you have the momentum, okay? One of the basic laws of physics, an object in motion tends to stay in motion until it's acted upon by an outside source. Now, the outside source in the case of pushing a car is gravity. But the also part of that is when the gravity is locked into it, it takes the most effort to get it moving. And then once it's moving, it isn't that gravity changed. Gravity is exerting the same amount of pressure onto and locking in, if you will, onto the four tires of the car as it did when it was stopped. But the momentum is making it easier and easier and easier to move. Now, sure, gravity can come in and help you or work against you, i.e. going up a hill or going down a hill. But at the end of the day, all of those have to do with being in motion, having the movement, having the momentum. All of those are the key to what it's going to take. See, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. Because let's be honest, okay, when you go out to push your car, because you have to move it and there's no way of just turning over the engine and moving it that way. In almost every one of those cases, you're not in a good mindset. You're not happy about it. You're not looking forward to it. You're not like, woo, excited about it. You are sometimes even flat out angry. Sometimes that helps with emotion. You put all that anger into pushing the car, right? But momentum is not about how you feel. It's about taking action. It's the mechanics of it. That's why consistency sits in the middle with clarity and connection. Connection is both an end result as well as a heart, the starting heart point, the mindset, if you will. Clarity is the training, the motivation, all of that. But without the consistent action, and a lot of times what we need is just one little tiny action to get the car moving. We need just one little thing. One of the things I'd like to offer to you today, I've done it for literally decades. In about 15 minutes, less than that really, but in about a 15-minute conversation, I can take a look at your book and I can tell you, this is what's working, this is what isn't working. This is the, if you will, prescription for how to reach the goals that you want. And whether your goal is, I'd like to sell another book, or your goal is, I want to be a New York Times bestseller. Now, number one, nobody can guarantee New York Times bestseller. Anybody that says they guarantee it is lying to you, okay? Because ultimately, the New York Times bestseller list is an editorial, and they have full editorial discretion over that. But those are the two, right and left sidelines. One is getting one person for free to just get your book and just get it in the hands of a person. The other side of it is getting about 10,000 people to get the print copy of your book in a week. All of those are very possible. All of those are very doable. Your understanding of what your ultimate aim for things is the direction you want to go. But the momentum is going to come from understanding that there's blocks under the tires, that the gravity is holding you down, that the car's not in neutral. And I can show you that. I can show it to you very quickly. If you just simply DM the word review or drop in the comments the word review, let me help you. Let me diagnose what's keeping you from being visible, and probably more than where exactly you can begin momentum. You can build all the other things on top of the momentum. You can look at, and I could name to you 20 or 30 different marketing strategies that you can use, all of which work, but all of which come after you create the momentum, after the car is moving. It may be a complete 180. You may be headed the wrong direction and you need to go completely around, but you can't turn around until you're moving. First thing you need to do is get the momentum. So let's talk. Just, drop the word review. I'm going to send you a link to hop onto my schedule, and we're going to get you moving, because momentum doesn't follow belief. Belief actually follows your momentum, because all of us are hardwired to want to see what happens, not just be told that it could happen. Let's get you moving today. Let's create momentum that not only gets you started, but has a path and a plan and a process with it so that it can keep you moving. All right? I'm so excited for another week for us to get together. All week long, we're going to be talking about how momentum is created, and it's not something that we wait for. Tomorrow we'll be together, and we're going to just talk about how to reframe some of the small wins, how to look at the very smallest of little micro wins as sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come because of that teeny little breakthrough. We're going to look at that tomorrow. I hope you're happy, safe, warm, and loved. And then until we're together again next time, you have a great week.